Guys, our panel is joining very shortly, and I am about to start our panel here. Hey,
Hey.
hey, Win, how's it going?
Mhm.
Awesome. Steve is joining us shortly here, and there he is. There we go. Cool. Welcome, folks.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing very well. It's exciting. We've had such a crazy bunch of weeks for Kotlin news and Android news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I should go around and give you all a chance to introduce yourself. Win, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm starting to look in the camera, making good eye contact. Hi, everyone. I'm Huyen Tuet Dao. I'm an Android developer working on Trello for Atlassian, and I'm an Android and Kotlin Google developer expert.
Awesome.
Wow, I'm honored, humbled. I'm Steve Peterson. I'm a Kotlin Android developer at a startup in Minneapolis called Bleacher with no E, nothing to do with the Bleacher Report. And yeah, I just have to say, in all my years of developing, now is the best time to be a developer on Android and Kotlin. Having a lot of fun.
I concur. I very much concur.
I'm just right now adding a link because I apparently forgot to in our. Yep, here we go. One moment here.
No worries.
That's one of the faux pas of being a meetup organizer is that there are so many things to remember, and then you forget later.
I feel like I should be making like a comment like you should have a Trello board for this just to be on brand for my company, but it's okay.
Oh, that's
I won't say that.
Oh yeah, I should introduce myself actually. Hi, my name's Colin Lee. I worked for a lot of places over the years, but at the moment I am an Android developer working primarily in Kotlin for a company called Meetup.com. And so we're hosting a meetup on Meetup with Meetup engineer. So and there's another Trello plug as well. It's great. We all got our fun things, and so let's see. We had a Kotlin 1.5 global event. In there, we discussed all kinds of crazy new features that they've been putting in and things they intend to do in the future. We also had Google I/O that happened in the last few weeks. So let's just start off with Google I/O because that was like the first one, and there was a lot going on there. What are your first impressions? What do you guys think about what do you think about went down at Google I/O?
It was different. I think it. So I guess I'm speaking from a perspective of usually being able to go and feeling like the kind of festival atmosphere. I was actually trying to explain Google I/O to someone this week, and it's kind of like a festival, but like for developers but we do serious stuff like announcements and things. And I think like what's interesting is that I think after 2017, I think is that when Kotlin became like supported on Android officially, that it's hard to beat an announcement like that, like something so like game changing or kind of sweeping, that everything has kind of felt, and I mean this in a positive way, kind of like refinements and kind of like improvements in developer life or user life. I guess Compose is going to possibly be another one of those big things, but I kind of feel like a little bit half and half. So like anticipation of Compose, because we got finally announced that hey, 1.0 is coming out in July, so that's really fantastic, and that will be definitely a game changer. And be totally different, but also a lot of refinements, like kind of like Steve, what you were saying, like about how it's a great time to be an Android developer. I feel like there's so many little things that have addressed or that are speaking to struggles that I've had over the years of Android development, like some improvements in widgets. Like I don't know, I'm kind of speaking very specific things, like the way the new color theming works, and I don't even window insets, or and also kind of like the trends that we see now, like increased focus on privacy and all that, and kind of like being able to more correctly and safely do like background things and stuff like that. So I don't know, it was like a good split between, okay, like I don't know, there's some jazzy things, especially with Compose and kind of the new UI enhancements and stretch scroll, but also just like making things better, making things stable, and kind of solidifying what we already have. So
So I've been to one Google I/O, and I agree it is a festival thing. I think it's an honest assessment, though. If you really want to learn this stuff, you can actually do that better not attending Google I/O. But everything's streamed, so you can get both. But yeah, we were the first one in 2016 that was in their current place, and they had some growing pains. Very well organized, but it was basically you had to get in line an hour before. You had to get in line before 1 o'clock to get the 2 o'clock event. So it was a lot of missed opportunities for that. But on the other hand, you struck up conversations with your other developers, and that was really cool. And that is why it's worth going to Google I/O. And I thought Google did a really good job, given that we can't get together in person, to try to get a little bit of that event. But I thought it was very well run. I stayed with the Android things, and Compose, I'm hoping if there's enough interest, next month I'll do a talk on Compose. I'm by no means an expert, but I do have industrial strength experience with it, and the good and the bad. And I agree with you that it is going to be the next best thing. And what I liked about that, and I think part of the success with Kotlin, was the interop. So, you can do as little or as much as you want with Compose. But yeah, the other things, I kind of broke it down into sessions that I can use immediately for work, things that are kind of on my wish list, and those that like Google Home. I don't see that I'll ever do anything work related with that, but that is like cool. And already I've got in our garage we have a smart garage door and a smart sprinkler. And the smart sprinkler actually talks to a news feed to find out what the weather is and adjust how long it's going to sprinkle for. So I could see the garage door talking to the sprinkler, hey, I'm backing out of the garage, don't turn the sprinkler off for 30 seconds or something. But it goes off at 4:30 in the morning. I tend to still be in bed at that time, so just a made up example. But yeah, some of the wish list things like TensorFlow, I think that's really cool. And I think where that, again, patting Google on their back, is that they're making it now so the setup isn't a major pain. Because I know there's so many times where it's just like you have to configure things and it's like a royal pain, and it's like, I'm out of here. So I think the fact that you can just go in and, I don't know if it's integrated with Android Studio yet, but if it's not, it will be. Yeah, and Google Assistant, that's another thing where we don't have any immediate plans to do that. But if I sneak that in and show them, hey, here's what it can do, it's like, wow. Or like, our Android app on, on the tablet, I think that would be huge. But, speaking of which, I see that Patrick, our friend Patrick, bringing Plaid to the world, that he did a talk at I/O. I mean, that.
Oh yeah, wow. He was telling us. Patrick was going to be on the panel, by the way, but he's telling us how much work it was to put on a talk at I/O. Yeah, that they practice the heck out of those things, and you can tell.
Yeah. Oh, and then to wrap it up, things that may not sound that impressive, but really are, like the test tool things, to try to get it now where we can, we don't have to spend hours and days trying to configure things to run it. That I think you can also like have it use local devices, emulators, and in the cloud all at once. So that's one of those things. And security, that's, people that work on that, or accessibility, those aren't the quote unquote sexy topics, but very important, and something near and dear to our heart. So
yeah, no, there was a lot of cool stuff announced at Google I/O this year. I feel like Compose is one of the big things everyone's thinking about, partly because the iOS guys are already jumping on Swift UI before we even have something that's a rock solid stable. But we're very excited about Compose. And I love seeing that we have Compose for desktop now. We have Compose for web. And I'm waiting and hoping we're going to get Compose for iOS. But I also kind of wonder, is that going to be, like work with KMM? Is that going to, work well for our iOS developers, or is it going to make their lives harder? So there's a lot of question marks there, but I think Compose is clearly the future. I know, Steve, you worked on instant apps when they were, you were probably the first person outside of Google practically doing instant apps, right? They loved making big promises.
That was my, I don't know, 5 minutes of fame. I couldn't tell anybody about it, but highlight of my technical career to see my app on a 30-foot tall, phone during the keynote. And it's like, wow. But yeah, I can't imagine how much effort goes into the talk. Just being, somebody who, may or may not have some that's shown at I/O was a lot of work. But
Now, what did you guys think? Were there? I didn't really notice a lot of Kotlin specific announcements, but everything's like Kotlin tangential. What did you think from I/O in terms of Kotlin?
So I feel like comparing that, it seems like, a lot of it is kind of in parallel with, with a 1.5 release and all those features, and talking a lot about kind of the new compiler and IR, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of like parallel. If we're going to talk about the Kotlin 1.5, I'll save my comments for that. I think the the Kotlin symbol processing is really interesting. Like, so I'm not the annotation build person on our team, so I can only say, ooh, that sounds awesome. But, it seems like all that we ever pardon the phrase, bitch to the team about half the time is like performance. And so something like KSP that would promise, like kind of increased performance with like, annotation processing and that kind of thing is pretty awesome. I have yet to check it out myself, but I think that's pretty cool. And I personally know several people that would be excited. So I think kind of, again, like kind of credit where credit due. I think that's going to be a pretty good Google Kotlin thing to be excited.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And did you see today they announced Jetpack Performance Profile Installer?
Ooh, I have to type that in my notes to Google.
Yeah, it's pretty slick. So it goes with Jetpack Startup and allows you to install a profile for starting up your app faster.
If I believe correctly, originally annotations weren't part of the Kotlin language, but again, it's that interop thing, and I think it's probably the the JUnit that drove it over the edge. But yeah, and over the years, like I went to the first Kotlin conf, and very united front between Jetpack and Google, but there's a little bit of not friction, but there was like Kotlin for Android coding style from JetBrains, and then there was another one from Android, and then I saw that oh shoot, what is it that data binding replaced it? The symbolic. Can't remember what that's called, but so that came out. I don't know if it's directly Kotlin related, but it sounds I mean, async live data is deprecated, right? So I mean that's going away in term and being replaced by Stateflow, which I think is the closest equivalent. So we haven't jumped on that yet. The live data works perfectly for our needs, but I think that's a cool feature that we're going to dive into more at Bleacher.
Yeah, I think similarly with us, we've kind of made, I think this is perfectly fine for me to say, but I think rather than switching to, or rather upgrading from RxJava 2 to RxJava 3, we've kind of committed to saying, okay, we're going to adopt Flow. And I think one of the most interesting things is that state flow, and how are we going to kind of go from a live data Rxy kind of world to using state flow. And I think it's interesting because with live data, I think when we presented with live data, there was a huge range of training materials, and like just like Google has been focusing on, and the team has been focusing on, is opinionated opinions on how to use a thing. And it feels like, and I was looking at Flow maybe a couple months ago, and like looking at the materials, it feels like it feels like we're still working towards the best way to use like the state flow and shared flow. And it feels a little weird. And I have to admit, like Flow is still kind of like making my brain work super, super hard. I mean, perfectly honest, I don't think I 100% grok it. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to evolve. I know like, last month, Yossi gave a great talk on stateflow here. And I feel like I need more of that. Like I'm really curious to see how this is going to go, and what the really fantastic parts of using stateflow and kind of transitioning to kind of, more the Kotlin specific async stuff is. And what the traps are going to be, because it just feels like so unfamiliar. I don't know if it's like harder or trickier. It's just unfamiliar. So that's going to be an interesting point to see how we all kind of manage manage these things, these new ways of like connecting UI and data. So
Thank you.
I'm curious the companies that currently are embracing RxJava, what they think of flows. You know, is it, oh, that's cool, or is that the enemy? You know, it's Rx is, you know, a really cool framework, you know, and it can do a lot, but you know, it's huge learning curve. I think it's complex. It's a big library. So, but you know, I think there's business decisions that companies are going to make and not just jump on the bandwagon of the new shiny thing.
Well, we have a large code base for all kinds of Rx in it, and we've been jumping onto Stateflow as fast as we can. But there's a problem there in that, as of today, if you're doing data binding, you need to use Gradle 7.0 plus and AGP Android Gradle plugin 7.0 plus to get access to data binding a Stateflow. And so we're in this like halfway limbo universe where everything that we can move over to Stateflow we're doing, and anything that has to like update UI is stuck in live data land. And actually, it came up in the Kotlin 1.5 global event in the Q&A session. They said that they're never going to actually kill off. This is Google saying this. We don't believe it. They're never going to kill live data, as they say, but you can keep using them for everything. But they're trying to push us in the direction of getting to state flows and shared flows for all of our needs in the future. So I think it's very promising, and we're going to be there very soon, because I think we're going to have to go to Gradle 7 for more things. I just saw like literally that thing today. The profile installation required AGP 7.
looking forward to that. I know, like for us, I'm currently trying to organize like a Compose hack week, because just not everyone has had a chance to kind of really get in there and hack with Compose. And something that came up was like, hey, like we need AGP 7.0, and we don't want to kind of balancing out like investing time in that and actually just getting shit done at work. So yeah, like hopefully come July. I guess they haven't given a specific date for Compose, right? Like it's July. Yeah, we're kind of waiting a little bit for like AGP 7.0 and like, the full support. And then we're going to go ham on that, because yeah, like you said, that's a little weird place to be. So.
Yeah, we're at Bleacher, we're using Compose in some of our production code already. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have held off, because I thought, oh, beta. And I was thinking, Compose, I think is for beta, ready for beta, but Android Studio, oh my gosh, I think my coworkers were about ready to kill me, because it was like, I can see what happened. It's like, okay, we have Google I/O, we will reach beta for that, whether it was ready or not. And now I saw this morning they just released release for Arctic Fox, and in 2.5 or 3 it got very stable. But basic functionality, we'd have it where you compile stuff, and sometimes it would compile, sometimes it would find these weird errors. The autocomplete and the error detection went bonkers, and it was like underlined in red everything. So that I think it's safe to with somebody who's willing to take that risk, it's a good time to jump in. But when we did right after I/O, that was a learning experience. But yeah, we spent a lot of time. I wanted to make sure our current stuff built with upgrading things to Arctic Fox, and then all the Gradle plugins and every other plugin, and just trying to get the magic combination that actually worked. And so that's getting better. So
nice. So let's switch gears. We were talking about Google I/O, Kotlin 1.5 global event. So not just the event, but also the release. What are you guys thinking about Kotlin 1.5? What's making you excited? What is a little hesitant? What do you think about it?
Oh my God, I'm so excited for unsigned ins. I know I'm a very simple person, but yeah, just like kind of these little things. I just think the entire, so the entire just idea or the process of the team kind of rewriting the compiler and like kind of understanding like front end and back end and their kind of like progress into kind of like a better state that's able to kind of support new language features quickly and being able to kind of like get those language features out to all the different back end platform kind of I love that whole system. I love this idea that it's not that I don't think Kotlin's ever stagnant. They're always striving to improve.
Mhm.
They never like turn the table over, but they're always like working hard to kind of and like look like 5-6 steps ahead and trying to kind of be in a good position for whatever the new thing is. And so I'm really excited and fascinated by all the kind of all the kind of like new work they're doing in the compiler, and obviously, oh,
No, just testing.
okay.
Sorry.
I was like,
It feels weird having like the person talking being this little tiny thing in the corner. You go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah, but yeah, like and obviously, like, was it Wojciech was saying, yeah, well, he was glad that 1.5 came out because the my bad, the JVM IR is required for Compose, so that's good. Again, kind of flipping back to Android, but yeah, just the iteration of things, like, so now we have sealed interfaces, which. Now, when I remember reading about it, I was like, "Oh shit! I needed like this 100 times in the last like 5 years." So, it's great to have, and things like unsigned ints and just all the incremental changes. Like they're always like moving forward, but always kind of also kind of letting us know, okay, we know what you need, we know what you want. Here's where we're at, and here's kind of how the two things will eventually come together. But here's why, like we're doing different things. And I think just everything's exciting. I'm kind of really looking forward to seeing how and when the new front end comes out, because again, developers always bitch about performance. So I'm kind of curious to see like all the performance enhancements we'll get from the new front end.
Definitely. What do you think, Steve?
I don't know if I can really add much value to that. Just concur with what you've said. Performance is king, and with the KPT, if we can get that, so it's not having to go generate Java code. I think that's huge, because that's been another sort of things with like Hilt or something. It seems like KPT. Do I say capped or KPT? What do the cool people say?
I think I say capped.
Capped is fine.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Not that I'm cool, but that's what I do.
Like with Hilt in the early days of that, like 2 months ago, it's just like getting issues with that. And, and sometimes Gradle, didn't seem like in sync with things. And so, you hate to do a rebuild all, but, so those kind of performances and cleanups, feature wise, I'm originally a double E, so I can appreciate unsigned. I think I can still do, two's complement arithmetic in my head, or not. Well, at least 8 bits. I can't do it with 64-bit. But what else? Inline classes. That's or what I was going to say, with the inline is going to be deprecated, or is deprecated.
They're called value classes now.
So that'll be a change. But I think it's just the overall that I don't know exactly what's going on under the covers, but if it's faster and it's more better, I like it.
Nice. I'm funny. I come from more of a security background, and so for me, the cool thing about value classes or inline classes is actually kind of like the security implications or the code correctness implications, that you can create a class that exists for the purpose of not having incorrect code. For example, like NASA famously over the years had lots of cases where they had millions of lines of code in multiple different units trying to convert between metric and standard. And by having value classes, you can essentially have the code itself make sure you're comparing two of the same thing, and even do the transitions and conversions for you on the fly. And so that sort of thing is magical. And in terms of security, the idea that you can create a class and ensure that it meets some kind of a standard as being that class before you compare it to something or use it for something. Because what inevitably happens is when a bad malicious actor gets their hands on your software, they're going to want to try putting funny input in there, try doing things that are not checked in any way, and then pass it through your string-based app, where at the end it receives a string, parses it out into some SQL or engine, something like that, and does a bad thing with it. So having strong typing and these value classes is actually really, really cool for all sorts of correctness purposes like that.
Yeah, and so us poor Americans don't have to worry about getting our feet mixed up in the real measurements and metrics and things like that. That was the thing with the road, or one of the NASA missions, right? You're referring to was like feet versus meters. Like,
Yeah.
I need that. If only we had value classes.
If we had value classes, it wouldn't be a problem. Yep. Exactly. The other one, obviously, seal interfaces are one of the biggest things we've been missing for years. That was my biggest geek out moment for 1.5. And I don't think, I know Google is most excited about the IR compiler, not for speed, but for their case, because they need it for Compose to make it better. But I think the coolest thing that's probably the least, promoted and appreciated might actually be KSP. Because as soon as all our libraries are rewritten in KSP, all of our lives get easier.
And I think that's what's great, though, is that both Google and I think Kotlin in particular in the World event and just in general just focus so much on the developer experience and trying to make our lives better, whether that is just through sheer like tooling and like that's another thing, Kotlin debugger, or sorry, coroutines debugger in Android Studio. I forgot to mention that's going to be so awesome. Yeah, like I was trying to like give myself like a coroutines boot camp because I looked at it first initially. I'm going off on a tangent, and then looked at it again in March, and I couldn't remember anything, so I kept going to IntelliJ so I could see like all the coroutines and understand like how scoping works and how these get created. But anyway, having that in Android Studio is gonna be fantastic. But anyway, yeah, this focus on the developer experience is pretty awesome and just a great, I guess, I don't know, it always seems like it's always there, so always appreciated. Thank you. Please give us more.
Exactly.
Can I ask questions?
Go ahead, ask questions.
So indirectly, it's from Google I/O, KTX, which I love. I'm always discovering new things in it, but I just have a hard time searching or knowing what it can offer because there's so many things. But it can be looking at, and I'll do a search on Google looking for something. Oh, there's there's Java code that's been Kotlinized. That's one thing, but I mean, it's like the other day I was doing something with low-level files, and there is, something in KTX. It's like, wow, that, is like Kotlin has done with Java code in general. It took those 8 lines and shrunk it down to 3. One if I really wanted to, put everything on one line, but I like readability. So I'm just, do you know of a way that, can make me more literate with KTX to discover, what they've written? And that's kind of a odd question to ask, but I'm asking it anyways.
Oh my gosh, I don't think it's odd at all, because I feel like when we first got KTX, it felt really easy to see. I mean, it was early, so there was not as much, but you kind of, easily, see like the whole range of KTX extensions. And then after a while, because of like the split with like kind of Android X, and it felt like I got really lost. Like, it's not like they're hard to use, it's like not knowing what you can do. I had this exact problem at work. I was like, is anyone else just not sure how to find like this discoverability of all the new extensions was getting really bad. There is like an extensions list now, so every now and again when I'm feeling bored, I'll just read down it and see if there's anything useful. But no, I don't think that's weird at all. I think I've had that problem the last 2-3 years, and I'm sure I or someone on my team has complained to someone at Google about it. But yeah, discoverability was like an issue for a while for me, so I don't think it's weird. I think unfortunately we have so many good things. Knowing what we can do is getting to be the hard part with KTX for sure.
Like, I kind of wish there were KTX lints. There's a plugin in Android Studio you can get called Key Promoter that'll tell you like about the hotkeys you don't know about, or help you create hotkeys. What we really need is like a key promoter for KTX. And another part of it is that there's so many libraries that have their own -KTX version in Google, and you may not know about all of them and what they do. Yeah. So it's actually a really good question. Like, how do you get all this stuff? What we really need is like lints. I think lints would help a ton.
I love that idea a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure for those of you that do logging, everyone uses Timber, right? So I mean, I like the way, speaking of lint, it does a step too, that if you accidentally write log.d or something, it chastises you and then offers a way to convert it. So, I think that, that would be a really tall order to figure out, to analyze your code, and see if there's a KTX equivalent that could do the whole thing. But I'm really, really impressed with Android Studio IntelliJ JetBrains with that, with its autocomplete, it's like, you're like listening to my conversation or something. It's not just, it's just so smart with guessing. So that's why when I was working with the bugs in the early Arctic Fox, when it didn't do autocomplete, it's like, I have to actually know the name of stuff. And
yeah, no, the autocomplete sped up a ton in recent versions of Kotlin and Android Studio, and it's made life so much easier. I feel like just even the lints, for example, that used to be something that you would have to run as a separate step, and it took a long time, and so nobody ran it, and then you just end up with this massive list of things, many of which were actually kind of like performance problems, So no, it's been a huge improvement to see Android Studio and Kotlin improving so much. They said in the 1.5 release, I think it was it a 45%, or I think I actually have the
40% for the wait, sorry.
I've got it. I've got it in front of me. Its code highlighting is up to 25% faster. Code completion is up to 50% faster.
I think auto imports I guess if that's like a different thing than the first two things. The auto imports also were like something crazy, like 40% or something. I was trying to like remember numbers too, so I could sound smart.
Yeah, I dug it up. Actually, I could actually screen share, but I don't know how it's going to work with the panel here, so it's okay. you can believe me.
Big numbers, and like usually think of like speed up for like tooling to be like 10%, 15% is awesome, but to hear 40 and 50% is kind of insane. So I'm actually that's why I'm like super excited for this new front end, with faster code analysis and et cetera, et cetera. Could you imagine like if things just magically happen like in an instant like that? Like maybe that's in our future. Who knows? Maybe that's just a pipe dream, but I don't know. It's pretty cool. It's definitely pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things I'm really excited about right now is KMM. I'm actually embarking on a project right now, doing a lot of KMM, and I've been hugely surprised. I think when I first started doing multi-platform, I did it just as a toy project to give a talk about it, to say how cool it was or how it actually worked out in the real world. And just trying to get iOS to work at all back 2 years ago was a nightmare. It was trivial to get an app for Android, web, and desktop, but as soon as you introduced iOS and the Kotlin native and building frameworks and then trying to get everything to interact together, it became pretty freaking hairy. Today, we have this wonderful thing now. There's all these new multi-platform libraries out there. We're looking at, so I managed to integrate Apollo from GraphQL. So you can have a client that you write it once in the Kotlin Common Code section, and it can get reused on all of your apps. Same thing with Ktor in the place of your REST client. And with we used is SQL Delight is what it's called. SQL Delight for instead of Room.
I'd be really sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Colin, we talked about offline a couple weeks ago. Comparing, like Flutter. What's your opinions on Flutter?
Well, yeah. Definitely. I have used Flutter, and again, it was for toy projects and for giving talks. And when I have used Flutter, I've always been impressed by it. I think what I like about Flutter is it doesn't try to do like what a lot of the frameworks do. Take, for example, React Native, where it uses native components. Native components actually make your life miserable, because if you're actually using the native UI pieces, then you have to, kind of like customize the code for each platform. Flutter, on the other hand, is basically like a game engine. It's like you're writing your app in Unity or the other one, Unreal Engine. It's like you're trying to write your app in an actual game engine. And so it doesn't care what platform you're on. Under the hood, it's all OpenGL. The only difference is a single constant that sets what platform you're on. and then alters the widgets it displays on the screen.
I'd actually be curious to hear kind of like maybe like I guess once you get to a good point, like kind of your end to end on KMM, because I have to admit I've generally been like very like skeptical over the years of multi-platform anything.
Yeah.
That's like my first job out of college. Like it was like this whole web and desktop, like write once, run everywhere. And it kind of it didn't go anywhere. And I
Right.
feel like any other solutions that jobs have had since then kind of just petered out. So I was really skeptical, regardless of how much I liked Kotlin. I was really skeptical, but I've actually been converted as well. So like, what do you think is the hardest part right now? Or the biggest challenge, especially like with iOS and Android, like multi-platform? What's your biggest day-to-day challenge, and what's your biggest like overarching challenge?
So, well, obviously, the biggest challenge is making sure that both teams are comfortable with whatever we build in this common module. If I was building a Flutter app, in Flutter, you're only building it once in one language. You don't have to think about anything really about customizing for platforms much. Yeah, there's some exceptions, but very, very, very few. Flutter seems like it's still kind of a startup thing. It's great if you're a small company with no resources. But KMM, like you have to set a boundary somewhere. Like where do you end your common code and when do you start your platform specific code? And I think a lot of companies are going just under the view model layer because like Android view models are really nice and you want to be able to do like Jetpack Compose or something above that. And then on iOS, you want to do like your own kind of view model with Swift UI above that. And so a lot of companies are like saying like, let's put it like just, we'll have a view model that's kind of common where it's producing the text output that gets converted into your UI, but then the actual view model is platform specific. I feel like that's where a lot of people are resting right now. And one of the companies really at the forefront doing a lot of KMM is TouchLab. They define themselves early on, I think, as being a KMM consultancy. And so they're getting all sorts of work, and that's helping them grow and suggest new things. And they've written a lot of the documentation for KMM, actually.
Yeah, Kevin Galligan over there has been a superhero. Like I think, to be really fair, at first it's like, at first it's overwhelming, and again, like as a skeptical person, at first like, oh, that's cool, Kevin. Now it's like, okay, you had it, dude. You had it, dude. So yeah, I definitely I think that's really fair to give TouchLab a lot of credit for their work and their advocacy for sure. Yeah, and I think I agree with you. Actually, it was funny when you mentioned Apollo, because I think I recently did some research at work, and that would be one of those places that makes a lot of sense because we're doing kind of research in kind of this area as well, and like I think those kind of places are kind of an easy sell.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything about like getting into that like view modeling and like getting into kind of like more like native view, like just broaching the outer boundaries of UI gets a little bit sticky for people. And yeah, I think like for us, it's still a hard sell just because of, the idea of multi-platform and also kind of like where do we draw the line, like you said. So we're still working it. Like a couple of people on my team are just, really diehard, persevering folks on trying to get like KMM like to be a thing. I think there's some success, but it's still always like a hard sell. Do you have like a good like pitch, or do you have like a good like you get salesperson advice for like KMM to people, or to iOS people specifically, not to call you all out or anything?
Well, I'm very lucky in that I have a wonderful manager who happens to run both Android and iOS teams, and she came from an Android background. You might know Anise Davis. She's wonderful. Yeah, she's very good. And so she's been looking into KMM a lot and into Flutter and into other things. And I think there's already some momentum, like we should give this a try. I was lucky, basically. I think if you're not in that situation and you want to propose a cross-platform thing, I would start small. I think one of the best things you can do is use something like the Apollo client, build some kind of single KMM library, as a separate AAR artifact. And you can actually build Swift Package Manager packages too from the framework, which I didn't even know. So you can build the packages that get used by your teams for one thing and use that as a test bed for further expanding your KMM within your company. I would go that way. I feel like Kotlin itself came in the door for most companies through unit tests.
Yeah, that's definitely so. Anise is awesome. Hi, Anise. She's amazing. We did something similar. Well, I mean, we did start with unit tests and Kotlin, but for we actually do have a little bit. We kind of got through the door with metrics because traditionally, like we had like mobile has very similar like sets of metrics, like sets of events that we're tracking, but we would always kind of obviously do them, Android side, a code of the side of the code, iOS side of the code. And I think over the years, we've done a lot of trying to consolidate and bring some consistency and accuracy, let's be fair, to our metrics. So that was actually a really good point as well, because generally speaking, we want to kind of measure, especially if we're comparing like the impact of a mobile specific or just any feature between the two platforms, having the metrics and the event tracking and user tracking be consistent is important. So that was actually really good. Actually, I think that was like a victory. So big ups to Vishnu on that one on my team for getting that through. So, but yeah, metrics I think was a good spot for us. Haven't got much farther than that though.
Cool. I almost feel like I need to go to the whiteboard, but I will spare everyone me going to the whiteboard. But taking this multi-platform architecture and what's above the line and what's below the line, how do you think you could solve the problem of business logic, or not trying to have that in the view model somehow? For I mean, business logic can be all over the place. I mean, it could be from, should this field be blank? Is that allowable to, verifying that the data is correct? But, how would you approach that thing to try to not duplicate that effort on each platform?
So what I was thinking was, and we haven't gotten to this point yet where we're doing it. I think we may have the transformations happen from the repository layer up, so that when we're actually in our Android view model, we're not doing real view model transformations. I mean, the purpose of a view model is really meant to be for the purpose of like taking, let's say something is a string, and you want to turn it into a date, or a date time. You want to turn it into a date with the right formatting and everything. That sort of thing can be done coming up from the repository in a view model that is not an Android view model. There's like this bad naming problem where an Android view model describes a concept that's not just what a view model does. It's actually its own thing. It's a way of storing your data for your UI, right?
And life cycle aware, that's the big. I mean, there's, I think you're getting to the point that there's view models that we know it from Android developers, and then there's models for the view, and they're not necessarily the same, but.
Right. An MVVM view model is not the same thing as an Android view model. And I think we use them the same on Android for convenience.
Actually, in this vein, I think Jake Wharton's been working on some really interesting stuff. And he posted something, like a demo on, let me see, I just found it on Twitter. I was like searching real quick, on like May 31st. And I think what he's doing, as far as I understand, is using Compose. Now, not Compose UI, but Compose, because Compose is really just a tree differ, more or less.
Yeah.
And using that to actually not drive the UI, but drive like a view model that can be used both on Android and on iOS. And he actually has a demo of an iOS app being driven by Compose. So
that's super cool.
And that's built on top of KMM. I'm not going to try to like attempt to explain what he's doing, because obviously that's a bad idea for me. But yeah, I would definitely check out some of his, I would check out his Twitter feed, and he's kind of mentioned it at some points. But I think, unsurprisingly, he's doing some cool stuff with that. But yeah, I think what I can say is like he's dragging that line a bit up. And I think this is dependent on, again, like somehow getting Compose to, work on, what is that other platform, iOS, and some other kind of technical limitations that will be helped by JetBrains and Google. But I would definitely look at his feed. He's doing very interesting things in this area. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to try to explain.
There was another one, and I'm not going to pretend I know all the details either about this. Decompose is a new library someone created for KMM. And it's based on Uber's RIBS architecture, the router. I want to say router interface builder, but I can't remember. So they basically took a fork of RIBS, and they built a KMM thing that does something similar to what you said Jake is doing. Now, trying to describe it on a feed like this without like having done any prep work is going to be difficult. But it is worth checking out. I could probably toss a link in the channel here for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check. So you said it's called Decompose.
Decompose, yeah.
I like that.
Let's see, Decompose. Yeah, there it is. GitHub. All right, here we go. Chat. Cool. Yeah, so we're about the 45-minute mark. We have. Does anyone have any like questions they want to throw in? You include panelists for this.
Okay, Android only feature that you're okay. How about an Android? Okay, let me try to think. What's your favorite Android UI enhancement feature update that they've done? Because they've done so much, like the colors, the stretchy overscroll, the sparkly ripples, which I think they've taken out, right? Like no one liked that, right? But
Sparkly
anyway,
ripples.
sorry. Since I know there's a Kotlin group, but as an Android person, what's your favorite Android UI announcement at Google I/O?
That's a tricky one. You want to go first, Steve?
I can't remember what it's called, but the theming, that.
Material U?
What's that?
Material U?
Yes, thank you. And I love the shirt that the guy was wearing too. I mean, the accountants or engineers stereotypically wouldn't wear something that bold, but yeah, it's just that's a part of my brain that I'm trying to get better at doing. But I think I was talking about this at work indirectly that you make up your mind on an app probably in the first 5 seconds, and how you not just UX, but I mean, how does it look artistically? And it's always been really hard to do that on Android. So I think just that, it's like going to give you a theme that matches your wallpaper, for example, and things like that. I think that's really cool. And again, Compose, to work with different themes, that takes something that's really complex and layers of XML to just, one DSL closure, and off you go.
Yeah, no, Material U is kind of cool. I think it's funny that they're reintroducing Palette like it's a new concept. The library's been around for almost 10 years now, I think. And it is a cool library, but I think maybe they thought people didn't know it existed. And what they're doing is they're basically using their Palette library to build their Material U feature, and then advertising, hey, there's this Palette library here. I liked the new widget announcements. I know we're in the process of rebuilding our widgets because on iOS, Apple is doing what they normally do. They are telling everybody that they invented this new thing that that's been around for 10 years. But because of the fact that people are excited about Apple, we're reinvesting into our widgets and making them better and more exciting. Yeah.
I have to kind of agree, and I kind of also like. I think just last year I was trying to do custom widgets, and I feel like of all the problems that I ran into trying to do a custom widget have been somewhat or in small part or in large part addressed by half the announcements, like better resizing, better information on the widget size, like being able to take the Material U colors and bring them over, like, and hopefully not worry about what an OEM's doing to your widgets and things like that. Hopefully, I don't know. So I think that's pretty cool. I will say that I'm really excited about the kind of default launch animations. And I think, being on also a big code base for a long time and a big app, and especially now, recently we've been doing a lot of like benchmarking and measuring of like the speed and like kind of, I guess, latency in different parts of our app. And launch and startup is one of those places that's always a pain in the ass. So anything that kind of helps to smooth that experience for the user, and hopefully help us, we have to do our job as well, but anything that kind of makes that experience more pleasant for the user and that can help us smooth over any rough edges is awesome. But yeah, all the other things that both of you talked about as well are my favorites. I have 3 favorites. That's cheating.
Did you guys see the new, what do they call it? Splash screens?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So I don't know if you're on Android 12, but I can probably even do a quick demo. Like if I kill my app here, 1 sec. Oh, it just did it out here. I think this works. There you go, splash screen. Oh, there it is. So it shows a splash screen before it launches your app now, and that's automatic. What it does is it just takes your largest logo and puts it center, and then takes your predominant color, and puts it background. But what you can do is you can actually put a vector drawable in there, or sorry, animated vector drawable, and you can make your own custom splash screens before your app loads. And I don't know if you guys tried to do this in the past, where you might like try to draw stuff with that before there's any XML that's available to be drawn. But positioning things correctly so that it looks right never went well. It was one of those things that always looked terrible, always worked poorly on Android. Having these new splash screens with the idea of you can write your own animations, I think is going to really make dial up the how exciting our UI is.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Yeah, I'm actually kind of doing some animation explorations for the team in the next like quarter, which I'm super excited about, and it feels like I have all the new toys to play with between compose animations and the these launch animations. I'm really excited. I'm gonna write that down as like my number one thing, because I think that is something that would really be awesome. And you remember like how many years ago was it like no splash screens, and now it's like, hey, we're gonna give you animated splash screens. Things always change. It's always fun to kind of see like how like the platform evolves and recommendations become what's the opposite of recommendations, or caveats, warnings, don't do's, and then or the opposite kind of comes around as like as users and platforms develop and evolve and habits change, kind of how things look. And I was thinking it's interesting what you said about palette, because I feel like sometimes these things get announced like certain, maybe not necessarily a feature, but maybe like material, for example. And I don't know what the assumption is like, remember for a long time, we were like, well, material is great, but you didn't give us any components. Like, how do I make a fab? That kind of like experience of conceptually there's something big here, but we need a little bit of like the bridge to go from where we are now to get there. And I guess maybe even like the color thing felt like that too. Cause yeah, we had palette, but it's like, how do I use this? And then bridging it to have it work in the system and having it work in Bridge. Seems like that bridge that was like, oh shoot, well now, that makes a lot of sense. So I really resonated with what you said there. Like we had this thing, but it was like, no one was using it. And maybe because we needed like a couple extra steps to make it really not worth our attention. That's not really fair, but I don't know, just easier. I don't know.
It's funny because some of the Google recommendations were ones that Google themselves broke, but then we thought that they were required to get featured. So like I remember at one point having an argument with a startup founder, unfortunately, about like we shouldn't do bottom tabs. back when Google is only top tabs and bottom tabs are evil. And then like literally a few months later they reversed themselves. It's difficult because like there's so many things going on in Android now. It's growing every year. How do you know what's there? Even that is hard.
I was muted, but I said for sure.
You realize that you guys have ruined my productivity for this afternoon. I have all these cool things I've jotted down that I have to check out, and I need to do work after this. But yeah, it's just amazing. Mm-hmm. So totally random thought. Where do you stand on the up button versus the back button? Didn't Google like switch? They've never been really clear on that, and it seems like they kind of switched their definition of it. So, but
I think you're right.
Android developers, what's an up button? It's like,
yeah, I know it's like hierarchical versus temporal, and then like I think they kind of abandoned that a little. Like in the early days, they wanted to have the separation, but then the users didn't know it was a separation. They just knew that
developers didn't know, so that's the unfortunate part. But
yeah, I remember, I think my first really big Android project, so I was switching between Android and iOS kind of like around 2012, 2013. And I think my last big switch, I became so bullish on like, and I did the same thing. Yeah, it's temporal versus like hierarchical. And I had this whole spiel, and I remember like fighting lots of fights because, we're always being compared to iOS, and iOS just had like the very simple horizontally pointing back button. Whereas ours were a little bit different. Like it's an up button, but it's pointed to the left. Don't be confused. So I think for a long time, I still hold on to that. And like, I don't know if y'all feel the same way, but sometimes when you're an Android dev, I feel like you hold on to certain things.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard to like the bottom tab thing, like you're mentioning, like you hold on to it, because you feel like you've had to fight off like other recommendations, other opinions, make it like iOS. So yeah, that one was hard for me to let go just because I'd fought for it for so long. But I agree with you. I think it's kind of just, I think we're kind of like, okay, I'm not sure what to call what we do now, but it's not that it's not exactly that. Like it's not up versus back. It's, I don't know what to call it. But yeah, I agree. Like times gotta change. And I guess so do we.
Yeah. No, what was I saying? So with bottom tabs, I like as soon as Twitter started doing bottom tabs, I was already like, yeah, it's okay. It's probably okay to start doing it.
Yeah.
And then suddenly Google's providing all the tools and saying, the thing we told you 6 months ago is no longer, we're doing the opposite. But the one that always burned me the most is when you get a lot of iOS-centered designers, and that happened throughout most of my career, probably true for most of you, that most designers have iOS phones. It's changing a little, but the worst one of all was always the frosted see-through backgrounds.
Yes. Yes. No, this was, I kind of, I remembered that because of the new Blur APIs and render effect.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly like one project I had was like, hey, can you make it frosted? I'm like, all right, let me pull out render script. And it performed like crap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember thinking the exact moment, I was like, oh gosh, I'm having like flashbacks to when it was like, hey, iOS can do it frosted. Why can't we? No, because you want the app to run, smoothly. But yeah, totally that. Oh my gosh.
There should be a future talk I do. Like I've been working up like training on how to do design reviews. And one of the classic examples I always use is that example because iOS has the hardware built into every phone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it just happens out of the box smoothly and magically on every device. But on Android, you get this widely varied experience where even render script is dead now.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what you're going to get. So it's like that's the problem is like getting between that design and reality,
Yeah, I think that's a common theme for us, especially with the multiple, the wide swath of devices. Like low resource devices versus flagship devices and everything in between, and trying to have like brand parity, I guess, in a sense between platforms, but still trying to make it like an actual like whatever insert platform here experience. I think that'd be a really cool talk just because I feel like, like all these like things that we thought about or things that bothered us or things that were part of our day-to-day Android life are now like switching and like it's okay, but now it's not okay. And hey, remember this thing that was really hard like 5 years ago?
Yeah.
We hear and I even like having it being called render effect. I was like, I had to like read it like 2 or 3 times, like render effect, right? That's not what render script, right? It was really funny kind of having these flashbacks to like my first couple Android jobs with some of these announcements in a good way, just seeing how far we've come and what we're capable of. So
it's changed so much. Well, thank you guys all for coming on today. We're going to have a recording of this. I'll be on YouTube for sure. I think it just goes up automatically. Next month, I think I'm going to try to do one on KMM because I'm going to see if I can get Kevin Galligan and I can talk with me and maybe one of my team members. We'll see who can get on. But yeah, I'm very excited. And maybe we can have one of you two on again soon too.
Yeah, I'm willing to do one on Compose when there's an opportunity to do that. But
definitely. Yeah, I think if I wait an extra month, I might even have more info on KMM because I'll have more pain and agony to talk about.
Nice.
All right. Cool. It was great to have you guys on. Thank you so much for coming. And it's I'm glad we can have these virtually or in person. It's been great to be able to have guests who can come from anywhere in the world. Just to join in for a conversation. I just love having that.
This was a blast. Thanks so much for inviting me, and it's been really great to talk to both of you. It's been fun, super fun.
Cool. Well, thank you, Wynn. Thank you, Steve. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy your Juneteenth.
Thanks.
Bye.